Secures Price from Wall Center and a presentation of Jaguar Land Rover Vancouver.
Jaguar Land Rover Vancouver at the corner of Burrard and First. JaguarVancouver.ca, LandRoverVancouver.ca, and so much around the corner coming up for JLR, including a big move just a couple blocks up the road. But in the meantime, check it out at Range Rover because new product, new models on the horizon, details coming up in the not too distant future. But the Q4s are around the corner as well for Audi. So lots happening for Dilawri at the corner of Burrard and First and Burrard and Second in Vancouver.
Bulldog poll question. We're asking you, if healthy, is Tucker Poolman one of the Canucks' best six defensemen? Yes or no? You can vote at Security Price on Twitter. We will put it to JPat. Coming up here, Bulldog line of the day. I'm going to take my Bears plus 5 points in Cleveland in the preseason finale tomorrow, Blake, because I know that Justin Fields in the offense is going to spend a fair bit of time on the field. And, of course, you never know how seriously and how much starters will play in preseason. So knowing the offense is going to be out there for a full half with 5 points, that's good enough for me on the Bulldog line of the day. Here he is, Jeff Patterson, one half of the Rink-wide duo with Andrew Wadden, our Canucks reporter. He'll be sitting in your chair here next Friday. Blake, good to welcome him back to the show. How you doing, Jeff?
I am doing well, guys.
We'll start with the Bulldog poll question. We learned today from The Athletic, Thomas Drance and Rick Dhaliwal, that Tucker Poolman is presumably healthy. And so if that's the case, does he slot right into the opening night lineup on that defensive right side?
Did we learn that? Really? Like, honestly, I mean, I think there's still so much uncertainty and a lack of clarity around this player that, I mean, I read the piece, but your guess is as good as mine. I think right now, inside of a month, and it's been that way all summer long, that, you know, the agent has suggested he thinks the client is fine. This is a head injury we're talking about, and not an isolated incident. We learned after the fact that he was plagued with migraines in Winnipeg. And Tucker Poolman, to me, guys, is such he's really a fascinating study when you think about it, because I don't think anybody truly knows what Tucker Poolman is, and yet he just turned 29 this summer. He's 29 years of age. He's played more than 40 games in an NHL season once. Played 57 games for the Winnipeg Jets. That's his high watermark is 57 games. So, you know, nowhere close to a full season of National Hockey League experience, and yet still was able to land a 4-year deal worth $10 million. Again, it just kind of leaves you shaking your head that he was able to command that kind of dollar and term, but we know about right-handed defensemen and the premium that the hockey world puts on these guys. That said, he didn't play much for the Canucks last year, and he didn't play much the year before. He hasn't even played 80 games in his last 2 National Hockey League seasons. And so again, I come back to the fact that he's 29 now. Like, it's not like this is a guy that is still getting his feet wet in the National Hockey League because he's a young player. He's 29. He's just really inexperienced and hasn't been able to stay healthy. And through all of that, I would probably answer yes, that he is one of the top 6 defensemen for the Vancouver Canucks. Now, that says as much about the player as it does about the group that the Canucks have assembled here. I did think that Poolman, I remember he started the season last year as a top 4 guy. In fact, he started the season as Quinn Hughes' defense partner and logged over 20 minutes. And I think the first 4 games and 8 of the first 10. And then by the end of the first month, I think it became apparent that he just wasn't cut out to be a top 4 guy on this team and in the National Hockey League. When he dropped lower in the lineup, I actually thought he played okay. I mean, Quinn Hughes was his most frequent partner over the course of the season, followed by Oliver Ekman-Larsson, and then Kyle Burroughs, who, as a righty as well, it was Burroughs that moved over to the left side. But the underlying numbers for Burroughs and Poolman were actually okay. And they were with Quinn Hughes as well. The disaster came when Tucker Poolman was paired with OEL. Like, those were not pretty numbers. Don't go look them up. Take my word. It does not tell a very nice story. So, Tucker Poolman, again, he is what he is. And if you look at his underlying numbers individually, like, his individual course, he was all right. And I think the Canucks got outscored by 2 at even strength over the 40 games that he played. You start to dig a little deeper, though. Scoring chances against, they were pretty one-sided, and high dangers were off the charts bad. And I think that's kind of telling you a bit of a story of this player as a defenseman, and yet through that, like, I don't think Jack Rathbone's elevated enough to pass Tucker Poolman. Poolman's got way more NHL experience than Jack Rathbone does at this stage. That's not to say that Rathbone won't get there ahead of him on a depth chart if we're, pegging them 1 through 6 or 7. But I would say, I'd answer yes to your question right now that if healthy, Tucker Poolman is one of the top 6 defensemen for the Vancouver Canucks.
Well, and of course, that he got that contract. It was Jim Benning who gave him that contract.
Indeed.
And that administration was so out of step with NHL value. Said at the time, I thought it was one of the worst deals signed that day. Don't think it's going to age particularly well. Here's what the Athletic said specifically on Poolman. The answer we were given, which should be interpreted with due caution considering the uncertainty that's attached to repetitive head trauma, is that all indications that the club has currently suggest that all of the team's defensemen will clear their physicals and be ready to open training camp, including Poolman. If Poolman is healthy, and the club seems more optimistic at the moment than they have been at any point this offseason, it would be a tremendous boost for the club, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
I just come back to what I said right off the top, where I asked Emily Castengay when they made her available on the draft day by Zoom. I asked point blank, what's the latest? What can you tell us about Tucker Poolman? Oh, we hope that, the reports we're getting are good. We hope that he's going to be available. Jim Rutherford, when he was on McCowan's podcast the last week of July, same thing, said there were question marks around Tucker Poolman. It kind of feels like that the organization hasn't been able to either reach out to the player directly or to his handler and get some sort of clarity that, yes, this guy is training hard, he's working hard, things are going well. As we know, it's fine to say in summer skates that everything looks good and you're feeling good. You ramp it up and training camp's so short, but all of a sudden you're through training camp and you're into the preseason and guys are whizzing by you and young guys are trying to, make a name for themselves and earn a job and run you through the end boards and those types of things. It can all change in a real hurry. I hope for the person that he is healthy and he's got a lot of life to live. But man, I guess I'm guarded at this stage. Even if I get those reports, I want to see it with my own 2 eyes that this guy, because remember, he came back the last time he played, he lasted 4 minutes of ice time. He thought he was healthy in February. He came back and he couldn't, handle the rigors of the National Hockey League.
Quite right, Jeff. It's murky. The player's always going to give himself the benefit of the doubt, and it's sounding an awful lot like the discourse we had on Michael Furland.
But I think we also have to question
we
also have to question the diagnosis here, guys. I mean, in the Athletic piece, they talk about repetitive health injury. We've been told migraines.
Yeah.
So it's. What is it? Are we talking concussions here? And again, we're on the outside. We have no medical history in front of us of this guy. But I almost wonder if these are concussion issues, and I realize that those that struggle with migraines often do for life and that sort of thing, but it just seems coincidental, a hockey player struggling to play with the head. This sounds like concussions to me, but I mean, what do we know?
Yeah, and it's hard to, as you say, it's hard to diagnose from afar, but for the moment, and more on this in a second, but if Hughes and OEL are going to play the left side, and Shannon Myers are going to play the right side, I mean, the way I would line it up is Rathbone's going to play your third pair left, which puts Poolman in a competition with Dermott and Kyle Burrows, right? On the right pair, on the third pair right side. Is
and
that
maybe a Calvin DeHaan.
A Calvin DeHaan.
There's going to be 2 to 3 guys really disappointed that they're not
exactly.
in
Exactly. There may well be a free agent signing to come here. Who knows? Jolson, Keeper, someone like that may have an extraordinary camp and get themselves involved in it. But is it Poolman versus Burrows versus Dermott as you see it right now, Jeff, on that third pair right side?
I'm not sure it's as simple as that. I still think Jack Rathbone has an awful lot to prove to this coaching staff and management. It kind of feels like he's graduated from the AHL, done all that he can there and all that they've asked him to do. He's ready. They gave him the one-way deal, but keep in mind, he started in the National Hockey League last year, played 9 games, and I think there were some concerns about his defensive game. And so he went to Abbotsford. Nobody's ever questioned this kid's skating, his shot. The offense is there, but defending in the NHL is a different animal. And so I still think that he's got to prove, probably to himself, that he can do it on a regular basis, but also to a coaching staff that knows him by name, but really, other than that, haven't had the chance to work with him, because the 9 games he got at the start of last year, obviously Travis Green and Nolan Baumgartner were still at the helm. So I don't know that you are silver plattering a night in, night out roster. A roster spot, yes. Lineup spot for Jack Rathbone. I think he should come to camp motivated. I think they want him to put on a good show and put his best foot forward. But a month out from camp, I think it's a little premature to say that he is your third pair, left side guy, locked and loaded, and something would have to happen for him to get bumped out of there. Dermott gives you the flexibility that if they like what they see on the right side, Travis Dermott certainly can play the left side and I think play it reasonably well. And then, as you said, who knows? Who knows what they do in terms of bringing in another body, or maybe they get somebody that does make some sort of push, that's off the radar a little bit. Like, Brady Keeper is fascinating to me, guys, only because it was such a catastrophic injury. I watched it that final day of training camp in Abbotsford, a broken leg, a lost season, hasn't played a game, an organized game in 18 months, but he has played in the National Hockey League, got into a couple of games for the Florida Panthers. And so, if he's completely healthy and he was back skating at the end of last season, I think there's a guy that would be highly motivated to, resume his career, get on the radar. I don't think that he is, in my mind, a legitimate threat to start the season on the big league roster, but I am curious to see, just because this is a guy that's overcome so many odds just to get to this level, and then to have it all taken away last year due to a gruesome broken leg. I'm just kind of curious to see what Brady Keeper is going to bring to training camp in the preseason.
Guys, we talked about all the peripheral guys, or Matt mentioned, Keeper and Wu that have an off. What about Philip Johansson, who's 22 years of age? Is there a chance there that he's got something? I mean, he had an okay year in the SHL. That's a right shot guy, right side guy. Does he have an outside chance of being one of those depth guys that could have an unbelievable camp and make a tough decision?
I would say long shot, only because I watched him out at UBC at development camp, and I actually was looking for him, and quite frankly, I didn't see much. And I know it was a summer development camp, but as a first, you don't see teams walk away from first rounders very often, the way Minnesota did. And there's obviously some adjustments to life in North America and the smaller rink and all those types of things. I would say long shot, but clearly the Canucks saw something there, as they did in Nils Aman, who was a draft pick of Colorado and unsigned as well, to give these guys an opportunity. But I would think that a guy like Johansson would probably need a really solid season in the American Hockey League, if that's where he's going to play. I don't even know ultimately where he's going to wind up this year, but I certainly not on my radar as we sit here right now as a legitimate threat to crack the NHL lineup.
Okay, so further on the defense, we had heard earlier in the summer they may try OEL on the right side. The Athletic piece says they may even try Quinn Hughes on the right side. So I would love your 2 cents on those experiments, if they happen to take place in training camp or in the preseason.
Yeah, and I saw Patrick Johnson wrote a piece yesterday about basically just eliminating positions sort of as a whole, and used Cale Makar as an example, because yes, Cale Makar, when the puck drops, lines up as the right defenseman, and then it all goes to hell, and he goes wherever he wants and does it, and does it extremely well, and nobody can touch him. And I think that, of all the guys that probably could excel on the right side, I don't think there's a challenge too great for Quinn Hughes. If you ask Quinn Hughes to play the right side, again, I'm not saying he's at Makar's level, and we've certainly gone through the Hughes and Makar and the rookie seasons and all those types of things, but I think a lot of the same things that we talk about with Cale Makar there, Quinn Hughes brings to the table. Yes, you could line him up on the right side for a face-off, but once the puck's in motion, he's everywhere, and breaking the puck out of his own zone, I don't think it matters which side he would be on. A guy with his puck skills, I think he could handle the puck on the backhand as well as probably anybody on the team.
He said he wants to score more goals, and coming down the right side as a left side shot actually makes you better. It's a better opportunity to score goals.
And yeah, for a guy that doesn't score many goals, it's not like you would be robbing him of this one, the one-timer, his big weapon or anything like that. In fact, you could put him maybe in a better position for one-timers, as you said, as a left shot guy on the right side. So I just think Quinn Hughes is that dynamic. I think this, generation of young defensemen, they just want the puck. They want to move all over the ice. And so there's a part of me that kind of is curious to see if that would work. But then what about the left side? All of a sudden, if Hughes and OEL are your top pair, now all of a sudden we just got back to the conversation about Rathbone. Then yeah, absolutely you're penciling a path for Jack Rathbone, but is Travis Dermott your second pair left shot guy? I'm not sure he's ready for that on a nightly basis. So again, it's moving pieces around here. The conclusion is that there just isn't enough on this back end, no matter how you assemble them and roll them out. But I am kind of interested in this idea of Quinn Hughes as a right shot kind of renegade, just moving all over the ice and doing his thing and play rover. And look, I think last year was a really good season for him, just in terms of being able to bring that defensive game along without it coming at any sort of cost of offense. And so I think his confidence is high. I know the piece said that the organization believes that he has put in the work here this summer. And so if that's something they want to, that's kind of, to me, that's what preseason's for. Why not give it a look at the very least? I think long term, you want to put guys in positions to succeed. He is a left shot defenseman. Hockey conventional wisdom would have him play on the left side. But I do think that Quinn Hughes probably would be up to that challenge if that's something that they asked him to do.
I was wincing as I looked at Quinn Hughes' shooting percentage, which is 5.3%, playing on that left side. And I thought, yeah, that could certainly go up. And then I looked at the defensemen on the Vancouver Canucks and their shooting percentages. Oliver Ekman-Larsson was 3%. And Tyler Myers' shooting percentage last year was 0.8% on 128 shots, a single goal.
Well, and we had to go deep into the season. I think it was at Madison Square on that road trip, he finally scored a goal. Like, it looked like he was going to go over the entire year. And the other thing, too, and we talked about this in season, it is incredible. Quinn Hughes didn't score a power play goal. You think about how much the puck is on his stick with the man advantage. And I know there are other weapons, and there are guys there that are paid to score power play goals as well. But my goodness, I just think when we talked yesterday about the power play and how that's a path to the playoffs, just be a threat on occasion to shoot the puck, to get a little more respect from the defense and free up guys on either side. I'm not looking for him to score 10 power play goals, but how could a guy that plays that much every power play, pucks on his stick, not get a bounce somewhere off a shin pad and in?
More on Tucker Poolman's shooting percentage on Monday's show as Blake crunches those. Look, Dhaliwal and Dranston confirm it, although Rick has been reporting over the summer via the agent Brian Bartlett that the regular season could well be a deadline for JT Miller contract extension talks. Miller himself has said on that Dropping the Gloves podcast that he thought it would be a distraction if those talks continued into the regular season. Now, it's fine for him to say that in the summer. It's part of the posturing and the leverage and the negotiation that's involved here. But I do think they should be taken seriously. And if they do decide that the start of the regular season is a deadline, they're putting a big bet on themselves, right? Got to avoid injury. Got to make sure you continue performing. If not at the 99-point pace, then, at the best pace you can to preserve the value of that 99-point season. Do you think the Canucks would view it as a deadline? Would you anticipate a JT Miller resolution by the start of the season if, in fact, this is the Miller's camp, if this, in fact, is the way the Miller camp plans to proceed?
This sounds like an awful lot of agent speak to me. And I get it. And if you're JT Miller, you don't want to be asked that question on a daily basis here, but not only here in town. As he goes out on the road as one of the best players in the National Hockey League now, especially if media is back in the players' faces. And I haven't had confirmation on that, but I get that it could be a distraction for the player. And yet you're telling me that in the middle of January, if the Vancouver Canucks internally decided that they had enough money and they wanted to go to JT Miller and his agent and talk contract, that Miller's going to say, nope, forget it. I don't want to hear him put my fingers in my ears.
Tape shut. No,
yeah. No, so, the whole thing, it's back and forth. It's an idea to sort of one last ditch effort. But look, the Canucks haven't freed up any money here over the offseason. They don't have, at least for public consumption, cost certainty on Bo Horvat's front. They may have a framework behind the scenes, but nothing has changed. And so they've exchanged their proposals. Neither side is happy. Obviously, they haven't come to any sort of agreement or conclusion. So, they may go and kick the can here before the start of the season, again, trying to get something done. But to me, that's one of those things, and you hear it, and this isn't the first time this has come up in hockey circles, this notion of we're shutting it down once the season begins. I still think that the lines of communication have to stay open. So I'm not too worried if that is the public front that the Miller camp takes. But I just don't see a path forward here for the Vancouver Canucks meeting JT Miller's needs unless Miller's willing to drop his demands somewhat based on what he has seen here over the offseason. But ultimately, I mean, a guy like Nazem Kadri came out ahead in the waiting game, and Miller is 2.5 years younger than Kadri, had 12 more points than Nazem Kadri. So I don't think anything that's happened this summer is going to lead JT Miller to sort of capitulate and drop his demands. I still think this is a guy that thinks he's setting himself up to absolutely knock it out of the park with his next contract.
Are you amazed that we haven't seen any noticeable money leave the organization here this summer? Like I thought at some point in August, I know it's a slow month, but I thought Jim Rutherford and Patrick Allvin were going to pull a little bit of magic out of that. And I don't even mean signing JT Miller or trading JT Miller. I'm talking a peripheral move, a cagey little move. And I'll throw Dickinson and Pearson as examples of it, but there could have been something else. I was prepared to be surprised this month by the Canucks management that they would do something, because I think that if you have space, trading JT Miller makes you look less desperate. If you have the space to theoretically sign him, but you're just working on terms, then I don't know that people think that they can really tighten the screws on you in a JT Miller trade. I'm just amazed that nothing small has even happened.
My only conclusion is that there just simply isn't a market for Tanner Pearson and Jason Dickinson. Both of them, if they had 1 year left on their deal, maybe that's different. But they've both got 2 years left on their contracts. And Tyler Myers with 2 years left on his deal, it just doesn't feel like anybody, sees that player and thinks that's a guy that we have to have. And we've heard Rutherford on the record say, like, they don't want to part with sweeteners, but that's essentially what's happening. That's the economy in today's National Hockey League. Vegas giving away Max Pacioretty. It's not easy to move money. I mean, that's apparent, and that's where, I think we touched on it earlier in the week, though. The night before opening night, everybody's got to get down to cap compliancy, but also the 23-man roster. And so there's going to be some decisions to be made here. Like, I think there's going to be some big names that wind up going to camps on PTOs. I was talking with Ray Ferraro the other night at the baseball game, out of the Seas game, and we were talking like, this feels like the kind of year, and we've seen this happen in isolation before, but, where guys are going to go to a camp on a PTO, and other teams are going to say, yep, that guy can still play. We're going to swoop in at that point and make him an offer. And so, like, PTOs more than ever before, I think, as a showcase tool for the player, not just for the team that he's in camp with, but for the rest of the National Hockey League. But also, I think we're going to see some big names on waivers. That's where it gets interesting. But also, there are still some, like, Sonny Milano and Stam Steele, are they still both out there and available?
They're still both out there, Jeff. We were going to get into that in this segment. I think we're going to wind up doing it next week on the leftover UFAs. But, fellas, there are 13 teams right now over the salary cap. There are another 3 that are within $1 million. That's half the league.
Yeah.
That's right up again. Like, of course we're right about Dickinson and Pearson not having markets with the remaining term. Like, of course that's right. But I think the other thing that's happened here is these guys with their public pronouncements, it's turned out to be a little too big for their britches. They weren't able to do what they thought they could do, that they misread and miscalculated just how locked this summer market would be.
I mean, I suppose that's the case. But if you can,
they miscalculated the value of their players on the open market. But I have trouble with that because they spent all of last year shopping each and every one of these players outside of a few and figuring out what they were worth. So
I mean, I know the Montreal Canadiens got some sugar with Sean Monahan, but he still takes up a huge chunk of their cap space. Tanner Pearson had like 15 more points than Sean Monahan last year. Like, I'm surprised. I'm surprised.
Monahan has the name value. He can play the middle, right?
Yeah.
And I guess, if you're going to take a shot on a rehabilitation project, I would think Monahan has a chance to bounce back, whereas I think we know what Pearson is. He's a 30-year-old winger who's probably going to be regressing.
I'll buy a dinner if Monahan bounces back.
Yeah, well, I'm not saying he will. I'm just saying if you're the Habs, I would bet on Monahan over Pearson at this stage of the game. But, guys, who knows? Like, the Senators are very aggressive. Colorado has nearly $4 million in cap space, looking to defend a championship. There are some teams out there that might still strike, like what they see in training camp or like what they see on their roster flatly and want to add something or want to get involved in a big deal prior to the start of the season. I sure hope so, because it has been a pretty tedious summer on the NHL player movement front. Yep.
Well, and just quickly, guys, when you think that the Canucks management group, the first big test was Besser, and I thought they stick handled that one reasonably well. And then they got Kuzmenko, and you thought, okay, like this offseason's getting off to a decent start. And really, since then, it's kind of been a flat line. And here we are now inside a month from training camp. And yeah, I mean, I expected a Horvat deal. Obviously, one will have to come at some point. But, it just kind of feels like a fair bit of inactivity, certainly more than I had anticipated by this stage of the proceedings.
Marvelous stuff, Jeff. Have a great weekend. We'll catch up with you Monday.
Tucker Poolman's shooting percentage on Monday. I look forward to it.
There you
That's right. It was much better than Tyler Myers.